Welcome to Dougie's Depot. I'm Dougie, and today we're going to be talking about which is the best live-action Spider-Man movies. Yes, this means between Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. Which ones are the best? It's been a debate on the internet and in life just, for so long, and I feel like I need to give my official take on it, being such a big Spider-Man fan. So we're going to be judging this by 6 criteria. We have the suit, the villains, the side characters, the best Peter, the best Spider-Man, and the best film. We're going to go through these, give each one of them a point, and then I will reveal to you who my favorite Spider-Man is. So let's get into it. So let's start with the best suit. Let's start with Maguire. So, of course, it's very unique. If you've ever seen the movies, it's got these big, thick wires that run all over it. And, it's just very, it's menacing. But the problem with me is it's very bulky. Like, those big wires create this, very stocky effect, which is kind of what they're going for. But when you think of Spider-Man, you think of this, slim, thinner guy swinging through the air, being real agile, and it kind of makes him look like the Michelin Man. Makes him look a little bit chubby, and, it just does not give Spider-Man the justice and the gist that I think of. But, it has to get its flowers because of how unique it is. But also, you got to talk about how great the Venom suit is. It has one of the most iconic Venom suits because Venom is in those movies, and he just looks beautiful. They didn't try too hard. They just made it sleek. They made it black. They made a really great job portraying on what it's like whenever he changes into Venom. So next, let's look at Andrew Garfield. This one is just beautiful. If you're a Spider-Man fan, you know how sexy the suit is. It is different between his first and second movies, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, that is. It's so sleek. It's got this deep red color. It's got these thin lines all over it that are like the webbing. It's got a giant logo, and really, it makes Spider-Man feel like how I want him to feel like, like swinging through the air and all that. And, the scenes with it, where he's climbing on that building and looking himself in the eyes. It's just beautiful. From the eyes to the logo to the webs. It's really just amazing. Let's look at Holland. It's very futuristic. If we're talking about specific suit abilities, it's really great. But, it's not too unique. It's got kind of a lame logo. It's not stylish. It's futuristic, which is what they were going for. And it works exactly with what they were going for. But, in terms of what I want to see, a Spider-Man create its own identity, it does not do well with that. Now, the new Spider-Man that we're awaiting coming up with Tom Holland, it is supposed to be comic accurate, which I'm really looking forward to seeing because it's supposed to be, comic accurate. It's classic. It's retro. If you've seen the clips, here's one of those. I'm really excited to see it. But if we're talking about suit, I think everybody kind of knew we had to give this to Andrew Garfield. It's beautiful, it's sexy, and just between all of them, I just think it deserves its flowers the most. So let's move on to their villains. Again, if you're a Spider-Man fan, I feel like you know where I'm going here, but let's start with Maguire. So here's a list of villains that it has, and this is just an insane crew if you just listen to this. You've got the Green Goblin, you got crazy-eyed, furious Willem Dafoe, who has one of the deepest stories in it, but who's better written than him is Doc Ock, who's also featured, so you got 2 heavy hitters there. And then you have Venom as he takes over Eddie Brock. That is a villain in the movie after he leaves Peter. And then you have the new Goblin. He's weird. And then you have Sandman, who also is a little bit strange, but that's the 3rd Spider-Man movie for you, which we'll get into later. Can we even compare this to anything? I mean, this is such an elite group of people, and do I even have to talk about from, suits to writing, everything? These are just such beautiful characters. I mean, let's focus on the Green Goblin. So the Green Goblin is introduced to us as Harry's father, and we kind of see Willem Dafoe get to create an outline for this character, and then we just get to see him be created and descend into madness, and his effect really doesn't leave. Even in the 3rd movie, he's present, and I think that that's a great start and great arc to continue through the movies. So, even just with him, I think just amazing characters. But on the Garfield side, Andrew Garfield, you got Electro, which Electro in these movies is that weird blue guy, of course. You have the Lizard. Again, just strange. I mean, his character before becoming the Lizard was weird, but then even after becoming the Lizard, you just have this big British lizard running throughout the movie, just appearing random places. As the Green Goblin, kind of. His Harry turns into the Green Goblin in this weird, icky looking person. Then you also kind of have the Rhino, but these movies were not fully finished, so we never got to see him. And that Rhino stinks. It is the worst Rhino I think I've ever seen depicted. So we just kind of have a couple lazy villains here, lazy writing, not very deep villains. not horribly interesting or creative suits. Just kind of just people for Spider-Man to punch. And I think that I don't like that. So, Tom Holland, elite cast of characters yet again, but just not as deep as I think Maguire is. So you have Vulture, great character, great, charismatic person, great relationship to Spider-Man throughout the film. First film. You have the Prowler, kind of. He's in the movie, but not as the Prowler. He's part of that whole weapons interrogation scene. You have Mysterio, who, was great, is a really just great actual, evil villain. Then, of course, you have all the returning villains, and I'm going to give those credit for where they came from rather than in this movie, because obviously if you just took all the returning villains and gave credit to Tom Holland, he would win. But in this case, he does not win. I am giving this to Maguire. You just have a bunch of classic villains that, old fans and new fans can like. It just writes them great. It makes them deep characters and has some pretty cool suits and cool scenes with them. And I think that just creates, sets up for a great 3 movies with Tobey Maguire's villains. So next we have the side characters, and this means supporting characters. And, forgive me if I miss anybody out here. There's a lot to cover in this video. I want to make this as to the point as possible. But let's talk about some side characters. So for Tobey Maguire, we have Harry, of course. He has, the cool guy, Harry. He's, very chill. He's a beautiful man and, all this. He's probably the best Harry. Then we have MJ. Again, I think that he has the best MJ. Little redhead, exactly what you think of when you think of MJ. His Aunt May is great. A tender old lady. Just kind of creates a great vibe throughout the movie. She's always there. She has a great connection with Peter. When she gets hurt or captured, it really, really irks you. And that's the same with Uncle Ben. These movies have a great way of setting up Spider-Man, and a great way that they do that is Uncle Ben. And I think that his inclusion in the movie is crucial, and I think it's great. His Flash, I think he has a great Flash. He's hardly in the movie, but, I think that fight scene and everything really is just what Flash should embody in a Spider-Man movie, and I think he does a great job of that. And then, of course, he has old Triple J. He has J. Jonah Jameson, played by your one and only. It's just it's where he started. This is where JJJ was introduced and where he kind of finds his sound and vibe throughout the movies. So I think he also has the best depiction of J. Jonah Jameson. Now let's look at Andrew Garfield. He also has a Harry, but hardly. He has Gwen Stacy rather than Mary Jane, which I think is good. I think Gwen Stacy's writing and death, I think it's really great for the movies, but I think a Gwen or an MJ done right can kind of serve the same purpose, so that's really all I have to say there. He also has a Flash. I think this is the best depiction of the Flash. He's a real jerk. They give him a little bit more story, a little bit more screen time. I think Flash is really good in this movie. His Aunt May is icky. Just why? Both his caretakers in this movie are just not amazing. Uncle Ben is also not great. That's Andrew Garfield's characters. Then we move to Tom Holland's characters. So we have I think the biggest list here. We have Ned, rather to Harry. We have Flash. We have MJ. We have Liz, his first love interest. We have Iron Man. We have Happy Hogan. We have sexy Aunt May. But no Ben. We hear about Ben. We never see him. So that's kind of a problem. But let's talk about some of these characters. Ned is one of the best side characters to a movie. He adds so much. The acting is great. The writing's great. I think he gives just the right comic relief to caring ratio that we need in a movie like this. His Flash, I don't like his Flash. He's just kind of a loser. I don't think he embodies the jerkiness that I think I want in a Flash. I mean, he definitely is a jerk, but I think he doesn't embody... He's kind of a poser, almost, and I don't like that as much. Then, of course, we have MJ. I think this is the worst depiction of MJ across all Spider-Man things. I just don't think she's great. I love Zendaya. I don't love her as MJ. Liz, decent love interest. She serves a great purpose in the first movie, being the Vulture's daughter, and of course being interested by Spider-Man, creating that relationship that we would miss without her. And then, of course, we have Iron Man. And I will say this time and time again, I'm sure this video, Spider-Man and Iron Man's relationship in this movie series is just amazing. I absolutely love it. I love in this first movie where we have this kind of father-son thing, and then moving into the second movie, how he wants to almost embody him. I absolutely love it. He creates a whole new level to this Spider-Man that sets it apart from both the other ones that I really love. So if we're talking about side characters, I think it has to go to Tom Holland. I mean, he has the perk of being in the MCU, so he gets Happy Hogan, he gets Iron Man, he gets all these people. But I really think that their inclusion is crucial to the story and not just a cop-out to add these characters. So I'm going to give it to him. Now let's talk about who plays Peter Parker the best. Yes, Peter Parker and Spider-Man are not the same. There are two different aspects to this very in-depth character that is Spider-Man. Let's start with Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire is the spitting image of Peter Parker. He's nerdy. He's very scrawny at the beginning of the movie. That transformation when he becomes jacked is just amazing. He just embodies the loser mentality and the kind of being in your own head type thing that I think Peter Parker should have. And even in his character development in the second movie, when he loses his powers, I think that overthinking, anxious kind of character really builds. And I think that he just plays it amazing. Then we have Andrew Garfield. I just think he's too cool. I think when I want to see Peter Parker, I want to see a nerdy mess, someone who's awkward, not too quirky, not really have any great qualities about him. And, you got Andrew Garfield, just beautiful actor, hot man. He doesn't really change up from Peter to Spider-Man. He's kind of the same guy. And I don't like that. Then we have Tom Holland. Tom Holland plays the nerdy characteristic great, but I just feel like he's too charismatic. He's pulling the beautiful women. He kind of he's in these nerdy type programs, but he doesn't embody it. And I just feel like he's Peter Parker if he was charismatic, but just into nerdy things. It's kind of a modern take, but I think when you're dealing with something like Spider-Man, you kind of have to stick to that classic ideal. And I think that he does not do that great. So this one also is going to go to Tobey Maguire. I think that he is the best Peter Parker, the deepest Peter Parker. And I think that even after he becomes Spider-Man, you still see Peter Parker poke through. And I think that that's amazing in his character development. So in turn, we have to talk about the best Spider-Man. So let's start with Tobey. Tobey Maguire, his fights are awesome in the film. I mean, it shows how human he is. It shows him get cut, scratched, all this. It shows how loved he is in that train scene. I think the only place where he falls short is that he's not quippy. He tries, but it falls flat. He's not horribly funny. But at the same time, you kind of get the polar opposite when he becomes Venom in Spider-Man 3. You see him completely change. And I think that's great as a Spider-Man, but I think personality-wise, he just does not embody that part as well as he should, kind of flipping that switch when he puts on the mask, making these jokes while he's, in life or death situations. It's just not what Spider-Man should be, not this cool, easygoing guy who's throwing quips at people while he's fighting them. Andrew Garfield, when I dogged on him when we talk about a Peter, but as a Spider-Man, he's just great. He has some great fights, great scenes, cinematography, all this type of stuff in his fight scenes that I think make up for where the rest of the movie falls short. He has great quips. You see him throw all these out while he's fighting. I love his interactions with the lizard. It makes the lizard less weird. He's kind of calling out the fact that he's fighting a giant lizard. But I think the most important part is he is hilarious. There's that scene where he's flinging webs and he says, "Oh no, my biggest fear is being killed by tiny knives." That's hilarious. I think that inclusion makes him a great Spider-Man. Now let's talk about Tom Holland. He's a great Spidey. He's a small town Spidey, and he interacts with the people well. You see him kind of interacting with New York, the smaller parts of New York where he's from. And I think that these are great inclusions. I think he also makes a great Spider-Man. But if we're talking about the best Spider-Man, this has to go to Andrew Garfield. He completely flips the script on us, because those movies are just not great. The Amazing Spider-Man movies, we all know, fall short in many categories, but him as Spider-Man is one of the best parts of it. So finally, for our last category, we're just going to kind of go through the films a little bit, talk about, last little touching things that I have on each of these movies before I crown my winner. So Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, we're keeping it simple. It has a great character development. And also, one of the best parts about it in my eyes is the fact that he is an organic Spider-Man. And I know that that's a controversial take. I really like it. I like that it comes straight from him. As a kid, I always loved that. I didn't like the idea of him having to create that aspect of his powers. I think the biggest part about a superhero is whatever's affecting them creates who they are. And I think that that's a big part to Spider-Man is him having all his powers from the spider. And also, it's just great for his time. Back when this movie was made, these effects, these scenes, they seem a little bit dated when you watch it now, but think about in the time when you're seeing that. I think that's why that movie was so popular. That's the one I grew up on, and that was really not a movie that I should have grown up on. I should have grew up on Andrew Garfield, but I grew up on that one instead, just because of what an effect it has. And I think that's why it's stuck around till this day, is because of how good it is for its time. And also, its villains are just beautifully written. I mean, they're deep, they have emotions, other than Spider-Man 3. But Doc Ock and Green Goblin are two of the most deep characters that they could have written for these. And I think that the self-reflection, the madness, all of this just creates a great cast of villains for these movies. In Spider-Man 3, they do try to introduce 3 different villains. I don't think it works well. I think it kind of gets too crowded and they can't delve into them as much. And I think that that's why that movie is considered bad compared to these other 2. But I think by itself, it's still a great movie. Now let's talk about Andrew Garfield. I think the biggest problem with this movie is it talks too much about his parents. In none of the other movies does it talk this much about his parents. I mean, it just talks about him too much. Their inclusion makes it seem crowded, and it's just unfinished. It seems like almost as they went on through these movies, they just tried to like throw in random little bits and pieces to just try to make this collaborative story, and it just did not work out. Not only because they didn't finish the movies, but because they did it that way. It just does not seem like it was planned out prior to being produced, and I think that that makes it fall short. Now let's talk about Tom Holland. I mean, the fact that he ties in with the MCU, I think gives him an edge on the others, but the movies are great. I mean, you can't really say much bad about these in a movie aspect. I mean, it's new, it's modern, it's got great storytelling, great CGI, great all that. I mean, it's got better writing for villains. They're fairly deep, just not as deep as Maguire. And I think his relationship with Iron Man is what makes this heavily considered to be one of my best Spider-Man. I mean, when we're talking about games to movies, you don't have that same type of charisma between him and Iron Man in any other movie. And whenever Iron Man gets taken away from the equation, he sticks in affecting Tom Holland and giving him an emotional aspect to make him human. So in terms of these movies, I think I do have to give it to Maguire again. I mean, Further Time, you know, being a complete trilogy, I think it just succeeds in all aspects. I think that that makes them great movies. But finally, it is time to unveil our best Spider-Man movies. And if you've been following along, you know where this is headed. If you've tallied up the points, if you've been mindful, you know that Tobey Maguire is the best depiction of Spider-Man live action. From being the best Peter, from having the greatest villains, you just can't talk enough about these movies. I mean, they're really fantastic. And, you know, whether you're someone who likes old movies or not, I think you have to check these out because it gives you an understanding of Spider-Man and a perspective that I feel like is what Stan Lee himself would have wanted. And I think, you know, I'm not even talking about strictly being comic accurate, but just being accurate to what I feel like Spider-Man should embody. I think that it does the best job, you know, and I've talked about it enough this video, but if you have not seen them or haven't seen them in a while, I recommend you go back and watch them because they really are great. They're amazing movies. They make you stressed out. They make you feel for Spider-Man and are really just a great watch. Thank you guys for watching this. This is my first ever production on this channel. Let me know what else you want in the comments, and please subscribe to get, you know, just so much more content. I have so many ideas for these that can get greater with a budget or with subscribers. So if you could leave a like, comment, and subscribe, that would be amazing. And I will see you guys next time in Dougie's Depot.